And this morning we're going to start lesson 6, and just to recap quickly, we just got finished with lesson 5, which was concluding of the first 5 books of the Bible, which we call the Pentateuch, which is the book of the books of law, which Moses wrote, and that was Genesis, Exodus, Leviticus, and Numbers, and Deuteronomy. And so the first 5 books we're done with, and that was creation all the way up to the Israelites building a great nation after coming out of Egypt. And so here we are. Moses just passed away and died at 120 years old, and Joshua is now going to be leading the Israelites over into the land of Canaan. So that's where we're going to start this morning. So lesson 6, conquering Canaan. The main conquering of Canaan we'll see is Joshua, Judges, and even in Ruth. So we're going to start in the book of Joshua. And just like everything else that we've talked about, when you have something big, you can break it up into chunks to retain it a little bit better. Same thing can be done here in Joshua. So Joshua chapter 1 is really basic. It's just basically Joshua assuming the leadership role. And him being in charge of the Israelites. And then in chapter, actually let's start there real quick. Joshua chapter 1, in verse 7. This is the Lord speaking to Joshua. It says, "Only be strong and very courageous. Be careful to do according to all the law which Moses my servant commanded you. Do not turn from it to the right or to the left, so that you may have success wherever you go. This book of law shall not depart from your mouth, but you shall meditate on it day and night, so that you may be careful to do according to all that is written in it. For then you will make your way prosperous, and then you will have success. Have I not commanded you? Be strong and courageous. Do not tremble or be dismayed, for the Lord your God is with you wherever you go." And he's basically reassuring him, just whatever happens, just be strong and courageous. I'm going to be with you. And we'll see some times coming up where Joshua's not 100% fully trusting in God. And the Israelites aren't, and then that's when they come into problems. And then God, is with them and helps them out. Chapter 2, we're going to talk about Rahab and the spies. Rahab and the spies. So, who can tell me what happens with this? Rahab and the spies. Yes, ma'am.
Joshua sent spies into Jericho to see, what it is, like Moses sent the spies into Canaan before they would cross over
That's right.
the river. And they run across. Rahab tells them, "Hey, can I be with you guys?"
Right.
'Cause
Exactly.
we're scared. Everybody's scared of you guys because your God is so awesome.
That's right. So we have the spies that. How many spies were sent into the land by Joshua? Two spies. So he sent 2 spies into the land, and he said specifically, go to Jericho. And when they do, the king of Jericho hears about the spies in his area and in the city, and they start, he sends people out to go get him. Well, apparently, like Tracy just mentioned, Rahab and a lot of other people have probably already heard of the Israelites coming their way, and they've already got a reputation of God being on their side. And Rahab is frightened. Okay, now there's two. So who is Rahab? Number one, who is Rahab? What's her profession? Right, okay, so she's a harlot, prostitute. So she's in the city, these two spies come in. She lives in the wall, so the way it's sectioned up in a city isn't just a city wall and then there's houses in between. The walls are pretty wide, they're pretty thick, and there's dwelling places in the walls. So we know that she lives in the wall, and we know that she's a prostitute. The spies come in, and the king of Jericho is trying to find these spies to kill them, and she hides them in her house, and basically tells the people that are looking for her that they were here. I don't know where they went, but so she lies, right? And she's a harlot, but she's also helping God's people. Now, it's not that God is condoning lying. It's not that God is condoning prostitution, but that it is what it is. That's what happened, and that's why it's in the Bible. And the other thing about this is, and we talked about this before with different things, especially in the New Testament, when there's writing about women. If they were wanting this to be a historical, glorious thing that has happened, they would write about the men. But it's the woman who is the hero in this story with hiding the spies.
I think that for me, the most amazing part of the story is that she is in the lineage of Jesus.
That's right. Yep.
That was just really amazing.
That's right. So, she hides the spies, and then they make a pact, right? She said, they tell her, when we come to destroy the city, since you have helped us, if you hang a red cord or rope outside of your window, when we come back to destroy the city, we will save you and all your household that's in your house. So anyways, the spies were able to go back to Joshua and tell him that that about Rahab and about them being able to take over the city and all that kind of stuff. So, the symbolism of this red cord reminds you of what? What does that remind you of?
Passover.
The Passover, right? They painted the doorpost and the lintel in red blood. You have a red cord, and whoever was in that household is going to be saved. Whoever's in this household is going to be saved. So it's a very, very symbolic there. Do you think that the cord that's hung out there, who is that for? Is that for the Israelites to see? Okay, don't mess with that house? Is it for God to see the cord?
Maybe both.
Or is it, okay, you believe, now it's up to you to do something to show your action of your faith, right? Because the Israelites really didn't need to see this, and we'll see in Jericho how that happens. They march around the city and the walls come down. They didn't have nothing to do with that, and God didn't need to see a cord. See?
I guess I never really thought about it before, but what happened to her house when the wall came down?
It says that her section of the house stayed up.
Okay.
Yep. So when the walls came down, except for her area. But hanging the cord, God really didn't need to see that in order to save her. The Israelites definitely didn't need to see it because they didn't do anything to knock the walls down. God did all of it. But it is an indication, it is an action that was required by Rahab. Okay, you believe, you're fearful of God, hang this cord. You know, but it goes back to the Passover. So we have yes, sir.
I want to go back to verse 10 when you get a chance there.
Chapter 2.
Yeah.
For we have heard how the Lord dried up the water of the Red Sea before you when you came out of Egypt, and what you did to the two kings of the Amorites who were beyond the Jordan, to Sihon and Og, whom you utterly destroyed.
That's 40 years in the past.
Yeah.
They went across the Red Sea.
Right.
And they're still talking about it.
Right.
And who was there at the Red Sea? The Israelites, the Egyptians. The Israelites hadn't got there to Jericho yet. The Egyptians are laying on the bottom of the sea.
Right.
Who's talking?
Yeah.
They know. They
Yeah.
heard this. The whole countryside
Yeah.
has heard this.
Yeah.
And they know who God is.
That's right. Yep.
For 40 years.
Yeah,
they-
word has definitely traveled. Their reputation precedes them. You know, wherever they go, they know that they're coming with a tabernacle and the Ark of the Covenant and a whole bunch of farm people and shepherds, but they've got God on their side. And
I could see the relationship if it was like 3 weeks later, we're headed to Jericho. This
Right.
is 40 years later.
right,
A whole generation.
that's right.
And they're still,
And they're still scared. That's right.
we hadn't forgotten God. Maybe God forgot about us, or maybe, he's forgotten what he's going to do.
Yep.
No.
Yep, very good point. All right, so the spies go back to Joshua, and they make a pact or a promise with Rahab, since she saved and hid the spies. So now we get to the chapter 3 and 4 is the Israel crosses the Jordan River. And how do they cross? You know, they've already crossed the Red Sea, right? Moses with his staff parted the Red Sea. They walked over on dry land, and then 40 years later, here we are at the Jordan River, about to cross over the Jordan River. So how does that happen? Anybody remember?
Priests are carrying the Ark of the Covenant, and when they start walking in the water, it stops.
That's right.
It stops.
So the ark of the priests go first, carrying the Ark of the Covenant, and as soon as their feet touch the water and they start walking in, the water backs up into a big heap. It's not like just the water level goes down and they're walking through marsh or whatever. They walk across on dry land, and the water is held back in a big wall. Yes, sir.
Once again, God saves the people through the water.
That's right. And the Jordan River is often symbolized as what? There's a few different things surrounding that. God saves through water. You know, He did it through Noah and the flood, did it through the Red Sea, crossing over the Jordan. But what spiritual connections can we make from that too? What else happened in the Jordan River years later?
Jesus is baptized.
Jesus was baptized in the Jordan River. John was baptizing people in the Jordan River.
Is that where Naaman was?
Naaman was cleansed in the Jordan River. That's right. Often we look at crossing over the Jordan River as a cleansing or a new beginning, right? Or of dying and crossing over into the promised land, right? After they cross over, what does God tell them to do? What does God tell Joshua to do? stones, right? How many stones?
12.
12. Actually 24, because there's 2 sets, right? He has them go get 12 stones. One person from each tribe was to go out into the middle and gather up 4 boulders or stones and carry them on their shoulders to the place where they were going to be dwelling that night, which ended up being Gilgal. But also, they went back to where the priests were standing and built up 12 stones in the middle of the Jordan River and built that as a monument or a remembering. What was the purpose of that? What was the purpose of the stones?
So I think it was for the next generation to know, right? What
For
happened.
generations to come, right? Your children, your grandchildren, whoever. What are these stones here for? Well, this is what, and we do that same thing. You know, Randall's mentioned it many times with even the Lord's Supper. You know, we have our Washington Monument. We have our Lincoln Memorial. We have different things that, why is that there? Why is that statue there? Well, it's because, you know, here we are hundreds of years later and we're looking back at these monuments or statues that our country has created so we can look back and tell a story about what happened or this person or whatever. And, you know, the Lord's Supper is a memorial for us. And what does it help us do? It helps us remember, Christ's death, burial, and resurrection.
Leo texted me, he said that Rahab showed that she trusted in God the same as today.
Say that again.
Rahab showed that she trusted in God the same as today.
That's right. Yep. So anyways, it's a remembering of and being able to teach the younger generations that we crossed over on dry ground. Not only, all right, you have these stones over here in Gilgal, you can have that monument, but to me, setting the stones up in the middle of the Jordan River proves that they went over on dry ground, and that's where they set it up. Because if I was out there in a river and you saw stones that were built up as, how did that get there? Well, it got there because water was dried up. And that, you know, and that's a good indication that happened. They were able to teach their younger about that. So whenever they cross over, that was chapter 3 and 4. What happens next? Y'all remember chapter 5? What's the very first thing they do when they come over into the land of Canaan? Say it again.
They're circumcising the new generation.
Right. So the Israel males are circumcised. That's chapter 5. And you might think, well, weren't they doing this all along? Well, apparently not. In the wilderness, you know, Abraham, that was a covenant between God and Abraham that they would be circumcised. And then during Moses' time, they were circumcised, and somewhere along the way they quit doing it. So in the wilderness they weren't really doing that, so that's the very first thing they did. And that sets them apart from other nations. And that makes them unique. And you'll find that between circumcision, between the laws, between the different things that they do, they're just totally different than what all these Philistines and Canaanites and everybody else, how they operate and how they live their lives and how they're worldly, you know, all of these things. There's something unique and different about the Jewish people. So when, I don't know if y'all can see this or not, but so here's where we believe they crossed over the Jordan River. Here's the Jordan River. They crossed over, and here's Jericho right there. So they cross over, and the conquering of the land is in 3 different stages. When they come over, they're going to conquer the central part. Then they're going to come down here and conquer the southern part. and they're going to go up north as far as Tyre and Sidon and conquer the northern part. So it can be broken up in those three areas. And when they first come over, they've already scouted out the land and the city of Jericho. So we're going to spend a little bit of time talking about chapter 6, 7, 8, and 9. And that's conquering Jericho and conquering Ai, and also talking about the Gibeonites. Does anybody have any questions or anything yet?
Also, something that happened, in chapter 5 is the manna stopped.
As soon as they started eating the food in the promised land, they were able to, it says as soon as they went over, they were able to eat, and it talks about different kind of things that they ate, and then the manna stopped. So God provided them, so they were eating manna and quail during the wilderness, and as soon as they cross over, now God's provided them with the land flowing with milk and honey, and it was very prosperous. So they were able to eat of the land and not have to have the manna rain down on them every day. That's exactly right. All right, let's talk about Jericho. God told Joshua how to handle Jericho. He told him the plan of conquering it, and this was not a battle. It's not a battle at Jericho at all. This was God's declaration and demonstration of his authority, because it was all God. He told them, who remembers the story? What does God tell the Israelites to do?
March around the city.
Say it again.
March around the city.
Once?
Once a day,
Once a day for how long?
6 days.
Once a day for 6 days. Were they supposed to be loud? Supposed to be quiet? Were they supposed to be blowing their trumpets? What? Tell me.
Quiet.
Huh?
Quiet.
Okay. He also told them, the Levites, to blow their ram's horns and also carry the Ark of the Covenant with them. So you had the Ark of the Covenant walking, going around the city. And you had the Levites that would blow their trumpets. And I don't know if that was a continuous or certain times or when, but they would go around. But the Israelites were not supposed to say a word. So me being in the city, tunics and sandals, that's an eerie feeling. You've got, and then so that was once a day they would do that. And then they would go back to their camp right outside. Next day, they would march around with the Ark of the Covenant, with the Levites blowing their trumpet, ram's horns, and nobody saying a word. So that was 6 days. What happened on the 7th day? What did he tell them to do?
It was 7 times around.
7 what?
7 times around Jericho.
7 times around Jericho. Not just one trip around. So they got up early in the morning and they made one trip, not saying a word. Second, not saying a word. Third, fourth, fifth, sixth. And then what happens on the 7th trip around Jericho? They were still blowing the trumpets. And when Joshua said, okay, everybody shout, they gave out loud shouts, and what happened? The walls fell down. Now,
Do we know how big the city, how far around it was?
I do not. Do you know how big the city was?
No, but we
Any
can,
indication?
they know where it is and we can look it up.
Yeah. They have found archaeological evidence of Jericho, and I think Greg's Googling it right now. And they did find archaeological evidence of the walls falling outward. Now, what's odd about that?
If you're outside, you can push them in.
That's right. If you're outside, you can't pull those things out, right? So,
Well, and I'm sure the walls are well built.
oh yeah,
Yeah,
they're
but
wide
like
enough.
people live in there.
But I don't know that the people have got enough strength to push the wall, you know?
No, they're wide enough, number one,
Yeah.
people living within the walls, so there's houses in the walls. And a lot of times, I don't know if this occurred at Jericho or not, but a lot of times they would have them wide enough to where chariots would actually be up on top and people would be up on top. It was a living city wall, let's say. It's not just a walls like we have for our building for an outside structure. There was a purpose there too.
Around 2,000 feet to get around it.
2,000 feet to get around it. So yeah, marching around the walls, marching around the whole city walls 6 times on that 7th day, and then on the 7th day, or 7th trip around, they let out loud shouts, blow their trumpets, and by the way, there was all the numbers that we talk about, 7 being a complete. How many trumpets did the priests have? 7. How many times did they walk around? 7. How many times did they do it on the 7th day? 7. So there's a lot of symbolism with the numbers there also.
I want to go back to your point, that it was eerie to watch what they did. Rahab said they were all ready. Their hearts melted
Oh, yeah.
with the thought of the Israelites
Yep,
because of what God did to the Egyptians.
that's right.
They were already scared.
Yeah,
And then these guys show up and do something nobody's ever done before.
right,
Weird things,
Yeah.
like walk around
right. Yeah,
quiet.
exactly. You know, and even looking back at the Egyptian time with the Passover, you know, they're outside the city, and while after the Passover, with all the death of the firstborns that happened, you had all the Egyptians were wailing and crying and moaning, and it was just and out there was just complete silence. You know, it was just an eerie feeling that, you know, how quiet the Israelites were and can be, and winning a battle in such a way, and that's only because of God. All right, so during this, so Rahab and her household is spared. When the walls fell, it said the Israelites went up into the city. So basically, the way I see it, whenever the walls fell, it allowed basically a ramp for them to come up into the city on all the sides to kind of come in. And what were they supposed to do in Jericho? Were they supposed to take everything for themselves? That way they could be a prosperous nation? Or what were they supposed to do?
Not to leave any person, and they burned.
Yeah, burn a city. And why is that? Why kill everybody and burn the city and all of that kind of stuff? Is it to show the Israelite power, or what do you think the purpose of that was?
Well, they were worshiping other gods.
That's right.
I think they were worshiping the moon or something like that.
You name it. Worship of the moon, the stars, their own idols, everything. So it's basically a cleansing of them living ungodly, right? And later on, we see that they were supposed to do that with the whole land, and they didn't, and that caused them problems later with idolatry and intermarrying with. It just caused a lot of problems with ungodly lifestyles, behaviors, cultures, and things like that
Yeah,
God despised.
the people that were left over would, number one, would be seeking revenge for
Yep.
deaths of their parents or whatever, but they would continue in their idolatry, so there's been several times when, with Saul, not wiping out the people that later on came back and bit him in the butt,
Yep, that's right. And I've got a note here, and Steve already mentioned it. Rahab and her family, they when the walls came down, they went and found her, took her, and kept their promise about saving her and her household. And took them in, and she lived amongst the Hebrew people, and she became a Hebrew, not by blood, but by marriage. And we see later that she is mentioned as Jesus's, don't count me, but great grandmother, however many greats you want to throw in there. But she is in Jesus's lineage, and a liar, a harlot, but yet a woman. But she is in Jesus's lineage. So
A Canaanite.
a Canaanite woman. That's right. So after they do this, the next battle that they have is Ai, and they are defeated at Ai. Why is that? And how does that come about?
Achan, was that his name, Achan?
Yep, Achan.
I think they were told not to take anything from Jericho, right? So Achan took some gold and silver and
That's right.
purple.
So Joshua sends spies over to Ai, which is not very far from, I've already passed the map, but so here you have Jericho, and here's Ai right here, and Bethel's right here. So here's Ai. So Joshua sent after Jericho. Joshua sends spies over to Ai to get a report. So the spies come back and says, "Hey, they're pretty confident at this point, right? Jordan River, crossing over, God's got their back. He destroys Jericho. He goes up into this. They go up into this city. They come back with a report and said, man, all we need is like 2,000 or 3,000 people. We got this, no problem." So they go to Ai, and Ai starts killing their people, and they get scared, and they run away. And they come back, and Joshua's like, God, why have we lost? Why did we turn away? What have you done, basically? And God tells Joshua and said, hey, there's somebody amongst y'all that didn't abide by the rules at Jericho. So he brought in the families and interrogated them and tried to find out. And Achan finally admits that he took several things. He took silver, he took gold, he took a mantle from Jericho because he saw it and he coveted it, and he snuck it and took it from Jericho. What happened to Achan and his family because of this sin? So they took him out. They took Achan, his sons, his daughters, his oxen, his donkeys, his sheep, all that belonged to him, his tent, the silver and the gold bar and the mantle. And he took them out, and the Israelites stoned them, not just him, but them, and burned everything as punishment for his sin. Then they rally up the troops again to go to Ai. Now that everything's been cleansed from Achan's sin, God is with them again. Let me see, I think turn with me to Joshua chapter 7. Starting at verse 12. This is before they find Achan. I meant to mention this earlier. So this is before they know that Achan's the one that did it, but God knew. Verse 12, he says, "Therefore the sons of Israel cannot stand before their enemies. They turn their backs before their enemies, for they have become accursed. I will not be with you any more unless you destroy the things under the ban from your midst. Rise up, consecrate the people, and say, consecrate yourselves for tomorrow. For thus the Lord, the God of Israel, has said, there are things under the ban in your midst. O Israel, you cannot stand before your enemies until you have removed the things under the ban from your midst." You know, and this we can apply to our own lives. If there's things that we're doing that we shouldn't be, then we have to clean. You know, how many times have we seen the cleansing process, whether that be baptizing pots and pans as a cleaning ritual that they did, or cleaning out the leaven in their house. Leaven is often used as a metaphor for sin, but they would literally take their books and clean each page for the dust in their house to make sure that they got everything out of their houses that has any kind of leaven or dust. And you know, it's all about the cleansing process. And same thing with this. You've got to clean the sin out from amongst you Israelites and get rid of Achan. Not just kick him out of the city or kick him out of the country, or kick him out, just totally destroy him. You know, and that's what they're trying to do in the land of Canaan, is get rid of all the ungodliness and all, you know, and all of that. And the Israelites end up failing to do that 100%, which causes them problems. So here we are at going to AI again. So the second shot at AI, what happens here? How do they do it? How many people do they use? What kind of method do they use to conquer AI?
Didn't they draw them away from the city, and then they attacked the city, and then they came in from behind them then? I think.
That's right. So we have so here's AI, right?
Mhm.
So they're gonna have I think it's 30,000 that's gonna go with Joshua to go up against them, but they're also gonna keep 5,000 between Bethel and Ai. And basically, they're gonna start fighting. Well, AI's already beat the Israelites once, so here they are again. We're gonna beat them again. These hillbilly shepherd guys, we're gonna beat them again. But they come out of the city to go fight the Israelites, and the Israelites. What happened the first time when they were fighting AI? What happened? What did the Israelites do?
Turned and ran.
They turned and ran, right? So as they're fighting, they turn around and start going away from them into the wilderness. Well, guess what? AI starts chasing after them, but it leaves the city without anybody there, without manning the city. So while they're chasing them, the people, the 5,000 between Bethel and Ai, go into the city, and what do? They start setting it afire. They start burning the whole city, start killing all the women and children, burning the whole city. And as the men from Ai are outside of the city, they can turn back around and look and see their city in flames. So now the Israelites are coming from on both sides now, and they totally wipe them out. But that was God's plan, and He was with them the whole time. And Ai had about 12,000 men and women that were killed during this battle. Okay, so moving to chapter 9, the Gibeonites. Who are the Gibeonites? Anybody remember?
One of the neighboring nations
So Gibeonites are hearing about their reputation precedes them. They know what they did at Jericho. They knew what they did at Ai, and they are scared. Go ahead. I saw a light bulb go on.
Okay, so are that the ones that they, kind of fake that Israelites out?
That's right.
act like they were on a long journey and all this stuff?
That's right.
They want to be their friends,
Yep.
and then,
So they wear worn and tattered clothes. They make sure they have old bread with them, and they come to the leaders and Joshua and say, "Hey, we came from afar away, and we've heard about y'all and your God, and we want to make peace with you. We're not from this land, and we want to make peace with you, so you don't make your way over to us to kill us." And what was Israel's mistake?
not getting counsel from God.
That's right, not getting counsel from God. It says that they did not get counsel from God on what to do. They made their own decision, and they were not supposed to make an agreement or covenant or anybody within the land. But even though they thought they were from somewhere else, they didn't ask God's advice or his guidance with this. So they made a pact with these guys, the Gibeonites, that they would not destroy them, they would not kill them, they would not do any harm to them. And once they made that oath to them and to God, it's binding. Then later they found out that they were nearby, they're natives, and Israel was kind of stuck with the pact that they'd already made with them. But what did they do to the Gibeonites?
And their slaves.
They made them their slaves, right? But it's still going to come back and bite them. They made them their slaves, but not all of them. And they were, as Israelites were moving around, starting to take care of some land. They didn't have all of them with them at the time. And we'll see that kind of comes back and bites them. Later they are getting another army's going up against them, and they're asking for help from the Israelites. And anyways, and later we'll see with King Saul, it's kind of they become a thorn in the Israelite side all along. Did you have something, Randall, too, or no?
Yes, it's just odd that they would honor a oath taken under false pretenses.
Right.
I'm trying to think.
I've also had that same thought in the past. It's like, well, you lied to me, so this oath shouldn't stand. But the problem is, they did give it shows their level of commitment and commitment to their word, because because it also says that they made an oath to God. Let your yes be yes and your no be no, not a situational oath, in a way.
An oath to God not to do it, not really to the Gibeonites.
Right. Well, it says that they made a pact with the Gibeonites and the oath to God, and they couldn't go back on their word. But I agree. In my line of thinking is like, well, you lied to me. You weren't what you thought you were.
Yeah. But I keep thinking to myself, there's something there about, in my mind, you follow false religion today, you'll be held accountable, even though it's a false religion.
Yeah.
I don't know, there's something in my mind, I hadn't figured it out yet, but
Yeah.
there's something there, there's a lesson there to be had about following false pretenses and,
Yeah.
and making an oath,
Yeah.
even under that circumstance.
Right. Yeah.
For us today.
The oath thing is in this culture very, very a fearful thing, I should say.
Right.
So in Joshua 9:19, all the leaders said to the congregation, "We have sworn to them by the Lord, the God of Israel, and now we may not touch them. This we will do to them, let them live, lest the wrath be upon us because of the oath that we swore to them." So it was a fearful thing
Right.
to I mean, to give someone an oath is one thing, to swear by our God. Now you're gonna shame God if you go against your own word. And so they were caught in a trick bag, regardless of how the Gibeonites were. Similar to how many times God was faithful to an unfaithful nation. He had made a promise to Abraham. And then later, he made a promise to David. And so because of those oaths, he's faithful. So, in this case, you would think, certainly in our culture, no, they weren't, they breached contract too.
Right.
So contracts is null and void, but that's not how an oath goes in that culture.
Right.
You have to keep your word, whether or not the other people are good at their word or not.
Right.
When you swear by God,
Right.
because He is perfect.
Right, and, basically they're kind of, I'm not gonna say the spokespeople for God, but at the same time, they are representing God in some way,
100%.
and if the reputation, that God is with them, you have somebody that goes back on their word. Well, what kind of God do you serve? And it's the same thing with us today. I mean, if we are dealing with the people of the world, and they can see hypocrisy, lying,
Yeah.
going back on your word, and things like that.
What do they love to say?
Yeah,
I thought you
I
were
thought
a
you were a
Christian.
Christian. That's exactly what I was going to say.
Doesn't matter how
That's right.
scumbag actions they
Yeah.
have. They're
Yeah.
going to use that against
It's
you.
going to be a microscope, right? They look at you differently. You're supposed to be set apart, just like the Israelites were. There's something different about a Christian, should be, than the world, and we should know that. And people, in the workplace, a lot of times they're like, you hear all kind of language in the workplace, and if they have any kind of whatever decency or respect for someone, I'm sorry, and they say, I didn't mean to say that around you. They could see things different with people. Some people are so far out there they don't care, but there's a lot of people that, hey, I should have said that, or hey, we're going out. Kevin's not going to go out drinking with us. Hey, Kevin, hey, whatever. They should see something different about Steve when you're working with your other coworkers, and we should be set apart, just like the Israelites were set apart. And if we do things that everybody else does, then we're no different in their minds. And then it's like, well, who is this God you serve? So time's about up. I appreciate everybody's attention, and we're going to be starting in chapter 10 on Wednesday. And so the way they've got it broke up is we call it the central campaign, the southern campaign, and the northern campaign. It's basically the Israelites taking over the different parts of Canaan. So we'll start in chapter 10, which is the southern campaign, that whole chapter, and then we'll move on to